What if I told you that one of history's greatest military victories hinged on a homeless man's corpse, a briefcase full of fake documents, and a team of British spies with a flair for the theatrical? In 1943, as the Allies prepared to turn the tide against Hitler, they faced an impossible challenge: how to convince the Nazis their invasion would come from anywhere but Sicily. The answer? Operation Mincemeat, an audacious deception where a dead man who never existed whispered lies into Hitler's ear and quite possibly changed the outcome of World War II. This is the extraordinary true story of the corpse that fooled the Führer. By early 1943, the Allies were planning their first major assault on Hitler's European fortress and targeting Sicily as the obvious stepping stone into the continent. Unfortunately, that was simply too obvious, and as such, the Germans already had the island fortified and were expecting an attack. Allied commanders knew that a frontal assault would result in a bloodbath unless they could somehow convince Hitler to look elsewhere. Enter Charles Cholmondeley and Ewen Montagu, two British intelligence officers with an idea so outlandish it might just work. Their plan? To drop a dead body dressed as a British officer off the coast of Spain carrying top-secret documents revealing the Allies' next target was actually Greece, not Sicily. The first major challenge was obviously finding a suitable body. Ethics aside, and in wartime ethics often were, they needed a fresh corpse with no obvious cause of death that could pass as a victim of drowning. Their grim search ended when they acquired the body of a Welsh homeless man who had tragically died having consumed rat poison, causing fluid in his lungs that resembled the effects of drowning. Now they needed to transform this anonymous man into a convincing Royal Marines officer. They christened him Captain William Martin and set about creating an entire life for someone who no longer had one. This is where it gets truly fascinating and perhaps more than a little disturbing. The intelligence team didn't just create military documents. No, instead, they crafted an entire identity, right down to the smallest detail. They gave Captain Martin ticket stubs, keys, cigarettes, and even a letter from his fictional fiancée Pam, who in real life was actually a clerk working in MI5. She'd even enclosed a photograph of herself on a day out at the seaside. They included an overdue bill from his club, a stern letter from his bank manager about an overdraft, and even love letters from Pam spritzed with her perfume. And to make everything appear as legitimate as possible, they obsessed over the aging of documents, ensuring papers had appropriate wear and tear. They even included a receipt for an engagement ring Captain Martin had supposedly purchased for his beloved Pam. The attention to detail was extraordinary. Captain Martin's ID card was slightly dog-eared, his club bill was exactly 17 days overdue, and they even inserted a St. Christopher medal, commonly carried by those who feared death by water. But here's the truly brilliant part. Montagu and Cholmondeley knew the Germans would be suspicious of any documents that were simply too perfect, so the deception needed just enough flaws to seem authentic. They therefore deliberately included minor security breaches, like having Captain Martin carry his ID card despite regulations forbidding it. It was psychological warfare at its very finest, playing on German intelligence's legendary thoroughness. Then on the 30th of April 1943, the body of Captain William Martin, dressed in his Royal Marines uniform and with a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist, was loaded onto a submarine and set sail on his vital mission. The commander of the British submarine, during a top-secret ceremony on deck, released Captain Martin into the sea off the coast of Huelva, Spain. A location carefully chosen because they knew of a particularly nosy German agent who operated there. And sure enough, Spanish authorities recovered the body, and while officially returning the documents to the British without opening them, secretly photographed everything for their German allies. But now came the excruciating wait. Would the Germans take the bait and fall for the deception? British intelligence held their breath as their elaborate ruse unfurled. They needn't have worried too much. The Germans did indeed intercept the documents, but more importantly, they did believe them. Hitler himself was so convinced by the mincemeat papers that he declared to his generals, the material is absolutely convincing. Sicily is obviously only a cover, and what happened next was exactly what the British had hoped for. Hitler ordered the reinforcement of Greece and Sardinia, moving his feared panzer divisions away from Sicily. So when 160,000 Allied troops landed on Sicily's shores in July 1943, they thankfully faced significantly reduced opposition. The invasion still wasn't easy, this was war after all, but military historians estimate that thousands of Allied lives were saved thanks to the deception of Captain William Martin. Sicily fell within 38 days, providing the foothold the Allies needed for their push into Italy and eventually the rest of Nazi-occupied Europe. Meanwhile, the homeless man, whose real identity was Glyndwr Michael and whose true identity remained classified for decades, was buried as Captain William Martin with full military honors in Spain. The headstone may bear the name of the man who never was, but his service helped change the course of the war. Operation Mincemeat wasn't just a clever wartime trick, it fundamentally shaped modern military deception strategy. The mission demonstrated that in warfare, sometimes the best weapon isn't a gun or a bomb, but a clever strategy and a convincing story. This bizarre blend of macabre creativity and psychological insight saved countless lives and accelerated Hitler's defeat. And perhaps most remarkably, it gave meaning in death to a forgotten homeless man, a man who, in normal life, had cruelly suffered from poverty and ill health, but, through the strangest twist of fate, became one of World War II's most unlikely heroes. Glyndwr Michael, a man who, though he never lived as Captain William Martin, died changing the course of history.